Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Bible Thumper Podcast, where somebody's got to say it. My name is Patrick Hayes, your regular host, and with me tonight is Stephanie Kettle, and she is going to be talking to you about addiction and Christianity. Stephanie, how are you doing this evening?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I am having the best day of my life. So thank you for joining us. You should know that you are the first lady to be here with us in the studio twice. You're the first lady to be a repeat guest, so that honor will be yours forever. No one will ever be able to take that away from you.
I expect a plaque.
We can make you a plaque. We're trying to get t-shirts made. Did you know we have stickers made?
No.
Really?
Like stickers for your car?
Yeah, or like a water bottle or whatever you want. I literally have a box of like 2,000 of them. I haven't found anyone to give them to. Well, I'll give you a sticker, okay. As many stickers as you want. And then on top of that, I realized that I can't just like put these up all over the place, because isn't that like vandalism, or you know what I mean? You can't just like put stickers up all over town.
You can.
Well, I'm sure you can, but as far as it being a Bible podcast run by a preacher, I was like, this isn't going to work.
It's like how you don't want a Jesus fish on the back of your car if you have road rage.
Car, yeah, because I'm a terrible driver. Okay, so Stephanie, why are we talking about addiction and Christianity?
Because we're both alcoholics.
Speak for yourself, dear. So, Stephanie, tell me when you became one of these dirty, low-life, despicable people you call an alcoholic.
I think I was kind of always one. Mm-hmm. I don't know. From the first time I drank, it was always in excess. Mm-hmm. But I guess the first time I really drank was probably high school. Mm-hmm. And
which year? How old?
Sophomore year.
I think that was me too. 15?
Ish, yeah.
Yeah.
I was one of those people who turned 16 my sophomore, like early, because I have a late September birthday.
Okay.
So anyway, 15 or 16. Mm-hmm. And from the moment I picked up alcohol, I would just go and go and go. But I didn't drink like you would say an alcoholic drinks in high school. It was like typical high school partying.
No, you weren't drinking any more than any other high school kid?
I was probably drinking less than your average high school kid. Like, I didn't go to parties a lot.
After high school?
Yes. Okay. So I went to college, and then it was like on the weekends. Mm-hmm. Then my mom passed away, and it became more frequent, and it became something else. Like at first it was like, hey, this helps with my social anxiety. And I thought it gave me something that I didn't have.
Oh, yeah.
And then it became more about dealing with grief or not dealing with grief, I guess I should say, and running away from life. And then we got pregnant and I stopped for 2 years. And then I was like, hey, alcoholics can't stop for 2 years.
Yeah.
Clearly
so
not an alcoholic.
I stopped for the term and early life of my baby, I must not be an alcoholic.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I started drinking again. And it just kind of escalated from there. Eventually it became daily. I think at my worst, it was all day, every day, a 750 milliliter bottle of vodka. Sometimes more, never less.
Yeah.
Every single day.
Just a train wreck.
Right. And it got bad. I think it was a year and a half from when I picked up again to when I got into recovery, because it went bad really fast.
Okay. So tell everyone about where we met.
We met at AA. And that's it. We met at AA. Is that fair?
No, that's it. I mean, that is the story.
We started becoming friends at Village Inn.
Yeah. So we met at an AA meeting here in Grand Junction, Colorado. And there was a small group of us that once a week, once every 2 weeks, once every 3 weeks, something in there. We would go to Village Inn, which is it's a diner, kind of like a Denny's or something like that. And we would go there after the meeting, and they had a deal, which was every Wednesday night, if I remember, was free pie night. So we would go to the meeting on Wednesday, then we would go there afterward with a big group, and we'd all order a cup of coffee and get a free piece of pie and just hang out a little bit. So that's where we met. And then when did I learn that you were a Christian and that you went to church and the whole shebang?
I don't remember.
I don't either.
I remember we became friends because I played Fallout, and
okay, that's right.
That's really where we
both
connected.
Into video games.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then as we talked more, it probably became a parent somewhere in there.
Okay. So there are a lot of Christians that might, okay, here's something that I found. And tell me if you think I'm crazy or if you've seen this too. There are a lot of Christians that might not trust a program that is outside of the realm of Christianity.
Correct.
Okay. So that was one of the things that I kind of wanted to talk about tonight is you and I are both Christians who were saved. We go to church, we read our Bible, but we also go to this program, which is not a Christian program. Would you agree?
Yes. It's a spiritual program by its own definition.
Yeah. Okay. So it was started by a couple of guys who were churchgoers, who did believe in Jesus. But the idea was when they were starting the program, they did not want to make a program that excluded everyone who was not a Christian, because there were going to be a lot of people who were alcoholics who needed help. And they were not going to go to a program that was run out of a church that used the Bible, that was, so God focused. So they wanted to make the program open to everybody. But then when you get into AA, you find out that God is mentioned everywhere, all over the big book, all over the 12 steps. It talks about how God is everything or he's nothing. You're not going to be able to do this unless you learn to grow along spiritual lines. It points you to God, 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 God all over the program. And I think their intention, or actually I know what their intention was because I read the biographies of Bill W. and of Dr. Bob, the two founders of Alcoholics Anonymous. And both of them really had the idea that, look, if these guys are going to get sober and they are going to start praying to God, and the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous tells you that is what you're supposed to do in the morning. You're supposed to set aside a time, where you're going to pray and you're going to meditate is the term that they use a lot of times. You're going to be going to God, you're going to be getting closer to God, you're going to be enlarging your spiritual life. And the goal was God is going to be able to take it from there, and he is going to be able to direct you as far as who he is. And, we hope that you find a place where you get to know who God is. You can, find that. Typically, a lot of folks find that in a church. But Alcoholics Anonymous is in no way claiming to be a Christian program.
Correct.
Okay.
Celebrate Recovery is.
So Celebrate Recovery is that the more popular Christian recovery program in America?
Is there more than one?
Oh, there are a couple.
Celebrate Recovery is the only one I've heard of. So,
Okay.
I mean, there used to be one, there might still be one here, but there used to be one at Canyon View Vineyard Church.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to that for a little bit.
There is another one called Reformers Unanimous. I'm familiar with that one. So I know several of them have started up throughout the country, different Christian-based ones. So really, I guess what I wanted to talk about a little bit was, okay, do you go to one of those Christian recovery programs?
I used to.
Okay.
I used to do Celebrate Recovery.
But you don't now.
I don't, because I found the support of AA was better.
Mm-hmm.
It was not like when they compiled the people in Celebrate Recovery,
mm-hmm.
Because they would separate like the codependents,
mm-hmm.
the men, the women, just any addicts were put. So you got alcoholics,
mm-hmm.
Drug addicts,
mm-hmm.
food addiction,
mm-hmm.
stuff like that, which
drug addicts were just lumped together.
All of us were lumped together, which wasn't a problem.
Sure.
But honestly, to me, it felt more, when we did our circle sharing, felt
mm-hmm.
more venting session-ish.
Mm-hmm.
And not so much solution-based, versus when you go into AA and you
mm-hmm.
go to a meeting, a lot of it is experience, strength, and hope. It's, hey, I went through something similar, or this is
and this is what helped
this
me.
is how I got through it, or this is how I've changed on this topic, or this or that. So it
or at
feels,
least that's what it's supposed to be.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's, AA for me felt more solution-based, which is what I needed. I didn't need a place to vent, because when I vent, I can get, like, sometimes I need a place to vent, but it's more of like,
sure,
to a friend or something like that.
I'll usually do it one-on-one to my sponsor.
Right.
Yeah.
But your sponsor will still give you solutions. But.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And really, I mean, don't get me wrong. You and I have a lot more time in recovery than a lot of other people do. So for me, when I call up my sponsor and I want to vent to my sponsor, the understanding is
that you're going to get a solution.
Yeah. At the end, I want to hear from him. I just need to get some stuff off my chest, and I don't want to complain to my wife or to my boss or to, you know, to different people in my life. I want to complain to somebody that has gone through it and understands, you know, what I'm going through.
Right. Because there's certain things you can't really, like, I'm not going to call Nick and be like, I have a craving to drink, because that's not going to be helpful to him. That's just going to freak him out.
Sure.
Send him spinning.
Yeah.
It's more helpful for me, and I think for other people, to vent to someone who understands.
Yeah.
But also, there is that understanding of, I'm going to get a solution. When you first get a sponsor, there's no understanding of that. So you call and you vent, and then they start giving you solution, and you're like,
what are you talking about? What do you mean?
I just wanted you to listen.
Yeah. I just wanted you to tell me I was doing everything fine, and this other jerk was the problem.
Right. I want you to co-sign my stuff.
Yep. Yeah. Sign off on my misery.
Yeah.
Okay. So something I just realized is I should have gone to a few of these meetings prior to, doing this podcast, so I could have commented. Actually, that's not true. I went to one Celebrate Recovery meeting one time. Someone invited me. I don't remember, and it was so many years ago. I really couldn't tell you, other than it was a small group. You know, so
it is smaller, and so what they do is you come in. There's usually, I feel like I remember food being there, so you eat.
Sure.
And then you do is like you watch a sermon.
Like food, not just
like a
donuts.
potluck.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like people would bring stuff.
I'm gonna start going to this place.
I can't remember if that was every time or just once a month.
Is it catered, or is it
no?
Like,
it's like people bring something.
I had to ask, you know.
But and then there was like a sermon based on recovery. So I can't remember. They would bring different people in who've had different experiences, and
so it would be live.
No, it would be
You'd watch a
recorded
video.
sermons. That
Okay. Okay.
We watched a video.
Sure.
And you could fill out a little thing with answers, like you can do in churches sometimes.
Sure.
And then you break out into your groups. And I think the idea is you talk about the message, but that was not really. It was more about, let's talk about your week, your struggles, stuff like that.
Would there be someone in each one of those groups that would facilitate the group? Like, was there a leader of some kind?
Yes.
Okay. And in your group, they weren't really keeping it.
I think maybe they were just trying to facilitate a safe space for people to
let everyone share.
Yeah, but and maybe that would have worked for me if I didn't know AA at the time, because I was kind of doing them both. So, well, I did AA first.
Yeah.
Then I was kind of doing them both as a recovery program, like doing both.
Sure. Yeah.
And AA just felt healthier for me.
Sure.
But they do have, like, each of the steps has a scripture with it that supports the step and stuff like that. So it is definitely Christian. There's prayer, there's sermons, there's talk about God, Jesus, etc.
Yeah, because it's in a church and it's not trying to be non-Christian.
Right. It's very open about what it is.
Okay. So now let's focus on AA for a little bit, because that's what we both have experience with. And really that's, a little bit about what I wanted to talk about. A couple things that I've noticed is, number one, when you meet other Christians in Alcoholics Anonymous, you kind of get together and you notice them and you kind of buddy up. Have you found that to be the same case?
No.
Really?
Well, I mean, we're friends.
Yeah.
But I'm friends with, I think, well, not that I'm exclusively friends with Christians, but.
Yeah. No, and I didn't mean like those are the only people you hang out with.
Their camaraderie.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying, is there is a connection, because what you find in AA that you also have to understand going into it is there are people of varying faiths, and there are people who are atheists or agnostic. There are people who hands down, flat out hate God. I mean, just hate God. So you're going to hear from all of these people. And it's funny because, like, I have one friend of mine who I don't want to, name names because Alcoholics Anonymous, but one of my friends who, he likes blueberries, and we would always like shoot each other a glance and like roll our eyes whenever someone would be getting off about, how much they hate God. And then they'd talk about how they're an atheist and they don't believe in God. And I'm like, well, it doesn't sound like you're an atheist, because, you sure hate the guy. So that's
how do you hate something you don't
how
believe
do you
in?
hate Santa Claus, unless you think he's real. So, but anyway, I found that, when someone finds out that I am a Christian in the program, it is a nice connection, because we both have a belief that is so similar and so and helps us out and strengthens us so much. And you kind of, just have a little connection with those folks.
Yeah. Well, especially being Christian, ideally, your faith would be a big part of your life.
Sure.
The biggest part of your life.
Yeah.
And so having other people who understand that.
Yep.
It's helpful.
So I have always told anyone who's a Christian, there's no reason not to go to Alcoholics Anonymous, or I should say, there's no reason to avoid Alcoholics Anonymous. I found it's helped lots and lots of people that are saved, that go to church, and they go there, they get the help they need. And in the same way, okay, so think of this. When you are sick, okay, you have appendicitis and you find out you need to get your appendix removed. Are you looking for the best Christian doctor? Yeah, you're looking for the best doctor. Okay, you just want someone that is a professional that knows how to remove your appendix. They have done appendectomies. They do a dozen of them every day. They've been doing them for 20 years. That's what they specialize in. You're like, great, you're the guy that I want. You don't want some dude from your church being like, you know what? I prayed about it. And I got this feeling from God that I'm just supposed to help you out with this. So, lay down on the dining room table and, bite down on this stick. So for me, I could care less what someone's faith is in so many other areas. When I hire a guy who's a subcontractor for me, when I'm building a house, when I'm remodeling something, I'm not looking for their faith. I want the best mason. I want the best tile setter. I want the best whatever. And it's wonderful when I get to work with Christians, but it has nothing to do with the problem we're faced with and the solution. So I've never found it to be an issue. And I think it's kind of silly for people who are saved to avoid Alcoholics Anonymous simply because it's not a Christian program. What are your thoughts?
I would completely agree. I think sometimes people can come in and take things personal that people are saying.
Yes.
And when people are speaking about Christians or, religious people,
dummies, and beating up on God.
Yeah. I just, I take what I like, leave the rest.
Yep.
I'm like, and there've been people who've been violently against religion who've said some really good stuff.
Oh yeah.
That I take with me.
Yep.
Like, just because they're not Christian doesn't mean they don't have a good program that works for them. Like, they have stuff I can relate to. And
as an alcoholic, I can relate to them.
Yeah. Well, aren't we supposed to be part of the world?
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of Christians kind of click together.
Yeah.
And you see MOPS, which is the Christian moms getting together and this and that. And if your whole life is surrounded in Christians, just
and
Christians,
only Christians,
right? How are you? I think it's good and important to have people who understand that aspect of you and you them, and that you can relate, and that your kids grow up around similar kids, so on and so forth. But we're supposed to be a part of the world.
Yeah.
How can we do that? How can we make a difference? How can we show our light?
Yeah.
When
we only surround ourselves in an echo chamber of nothing but Christians.
Right.
No, I totally get it. And I've been able to become friends with, and for that matter, witness to, and even lead folks to the Lord that I never would have had the opportunity to, interact with outside of Alcoholics Anonymous, because we're a very different bunch. We're very varied, spiritually, politically, every different way in the world. And I've made some friends, and I've sponsored some guys where I shake my head and I'm like, why on earth did this guy ask me to sponsor him? Because I don't think it's a secret in AA that Patrick is, the Bible thumping guy. Like, I talk about the Bible regularly at meetings. I talk about God and Jesus. And I talk about all those things. So the last guy that asked me to sponsor him was an atheist who hated God. And, for me, I was shaking my head. I'm like, where, what, how, yeah, sure, I'll sponsor you. Sounds great. I've had people come up to me and ask me to sponsor them because they wanted to learn more about the Big Book and how it related to the Bible. And they wanted to know the connections and the verses. And the last guy that asked me to do that was a homosexual, and I hate to tell you, but I haven't found any other place where a homosexual asked me if he could come to my house once a week for an hour and talk about the Bible, and that's what we got to do. So I get to meet men and women of just such a, wide variety that I get to share my faith with, talk about God with, and in several cases, share the gospel with and get on my knees and pray with them to receive Jesus as their savior. And yeah, for me, I don't see the issue with it, at all.
No, I think personally, I think Christianity blends well with AA.
Yeah,
I feel like they click well together.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to lead into a question I have for you is,
give it 'em.
What do you do as a sponsor
Mhm.
who is of a Christian faith
Uh-huh.
when there's that you have sponsees who have their own conception of God?
Mhm.
Where does the evangelizing Christian part end and the sponsorship begin? Or does that make sense?
Yeah.
Am I being clear?
No. I think I know what you mean. So let me tell you this. Let me give you a couple things. Okay. Number one, leaving AA aside, let's just talk about my secular friend, family member, coworker, whoever. Okay. How do I get them the gospel and introduce them to Jesus? And what I've always used is the analogy or the parable of the Girl Scout selling cookies, right? Okay. So you have someone that knocks on your door and they are there to raise money for their whatever. Okay. And some people will yell through the door, go away. All right. That's as far as I go with those people. They are totally shut off right now. I can't do anything more. No problem. I'm polite. Okay. They know what I'm there for. They don't want it. Then you find the folks, and I used to go door knocking, in neighborhoods and would hand out gospel tracts and invite people to church, and just, lots of people would move to town and they'd be new and they don't have a church. So I'd, be there to invite them to church. So some people would crack the door like this much. Okay. Just enough to like, here you go. We're from here. This is an invitation. Okay. Thank you. Bye. And they'd shut the door. So they gave me this much room and I took advantage of it. And then that was it. They closed the door. Okay. Now I'm done. Some people will crack the door a little more and they'll talk to you, and then you can talk to them because they open the door this much. Other people will open the door all the way and they'll stand there and chit chat with you about the whole thing. And you keep chit chatting until the door, literally or metaphorically, starts to close. When it starts to close, you don't put your foot in the door, right, and keep forcing it down their throat.
Right.
You let it go tactfully, and you were given an opportunity and you took it, and that's all you got. Other people will open the door all the way. They'll invite you inside for coffee. And then after 20 minutes of talking, they will get on their knees with you in their living room by their couch, and they will pray to receive the Lord Jesus. But it's all dependent upon them. How much did they open the door? Okay. So now going to AA and sponsoring a guy, what I've always done is I don't go out of my way to push my Christian faith on anyone in AA, other than to remind them somewhat regularly that what I believe here, I'm not going to, push on you, because it's not the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And the program of Alcoholics Anonymous says a power greater than yourself. Now, the funny thing is that's step 2. Step 3 says, we'll turn my will and my life over to the care of God. So the program by itself forces people down, kind of a funnel into a chute that directs them to God. So we're going to be dealing with it on our own. But oftentimes I'll just remind people like, look, you don't have to believe what I believe, and what I believe is different from what the book says. And that will always get them asking me, well, what do you believe? So when they open the door, great. Well, we can talk about this, but understand we're kind of we're pausing our discussion on the big book. And we're just going to talk for a minute about God in general.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is not me sponsoring you. This is just two guys talking on my deck. So for those of you at home that might not, know anything about Alcoholics Anonymous, the brief story is when you go to AA, you, number one, get a sponsor, or you're supposed to. And then that sponsor is going to read a book with you called the Alcoholics Anonymous Big Book. And they are going to take you through the 12 steps. You agree?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's the basics of it. Typically, a lot of sponsors will meet with their new, younger, inexperienced sponsee once a week for an hour, out for coffee at their house, and they'll read through a little bit of the book and they'll talk about it, and we'll start going through the steps. Okay. So it is during that time that Stephanie and I are talking about, when do you introduce them to God, or talk about it, or mention it, or not mention it, or how. So that's what I've found, is that it's going to come up because so many people have trouble with the idea of God, this creator authority in their life, that you're going to be talking about it. And I just mentioned to them every once in a while. Now, I'm not telling you have to believe what I believe. I'm not, that's not what we're doing here. But the book says you do have to believe in this. Otherwise, it's not going to work, So I found that they usually bring it up to me and I don't have to worry about it. And then when they open the door this much, I talk that much. And we close the door, we stop and we move on to whatever else. And over a little bit of time, they want to know more and more, because it's almost like they are at the zoo and they're looking at this animal that they've never seen before. And they're like, this is so interesting. I've never seen one of these. Where did it come from? And what does it do? Talking about looking at the Christian. So I found that it just seems to come up without, having to push it at all.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, have you sponsored any girls?
I've sponsored some girls, yeah.
Have they been anti-God? Have they been Christian? Have they been anti-Christian, anti-Bible?
I wouldn't say I've had any like fiercely anti.
Uh-huh.
I've definitely had, like nature, energy, universe is the higher power. I've had God like as a general sense, but not the Christian God.
Sure.
So I don't I don't think I've had one that's like Christian.
Okay. Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've only had 4.
Sure.
One of them might have been, or kind of like at least exploring that.
Oh,
avenue.
okay. Yeah.
So
if I think about it, so technically I have 4 sponsees now. With that being said, I haven't heard from 2 of them in quite a while. So, but they haven't officially fired me or, died or anything. So I'm still their sponsor as soon as they decide they want to get back into AA and get going. And one of them is a Christian, raised in church, loves the Bible. I've invited him and brought him to church, and he likes it all. I have another one who is like atheistic, really had pretty serious hate on for Christians in general, the Bible, the whole idea of God. And that's been, really a wonderful transformation to see God work in his life and him recognize more and more that there's something there, and then I've had a couple others of various faiths, and one guy who kind of really got hurt and burned in church. And you'll find that from time to time, and for him, I think he's coming around, but it's the long game.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it often is. And I think sometimes Christians can be Christianity's worst enemy.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's funny because you're talking about Christians not wanting to go to AA. Then you have people who are anti-God not wanting to go to AA.
Oh, yeah. Because, too much God and not enough God.
Yeah.
Yeah, from both ends. They're trying to avoid it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's exactly what we've seen. Okay. So don't see an issue with Christians going to Alcoholics Anonymous. Let me ask you this. What do you think about addiction, untreated addiction in our churches? As far as, is it an issue in Christianity? This idea that, well, we're Christians, we don't have problems. And is that getting in the way of people getting the help they need?
I think so. You didn't come to God until after you were in recovery.
Correct. That's where I would say I met God, was in rehab, and then in the Narcotics Anonymous meetings and Alcoholics Anonymous meetings that followed.
Right. So I was saved before my addiction.
Yeah. You grew up as a kid. You were going to church.
No.
Oh, it was in high school.
Yeah. I started going when I was like,
that's right. Okay. I remember now.
16.
Okay.
Or something like that. I started kind of exploring because I was like, well,
Sure.
life can't get any worse. And my friends kept inviting me.
Okay.
So
let's give this a go.
Yeah. I think, like we talked about on the last podcast we did, it's that Sunday best. I don't curse. I don't smoke. I don't drink. And we're all just portraying our best selves at church, right?
Yeah.
And then the sermon finishes and we leave.
Yeah.
I think, I've heard a small handful of sermons about addiction.
Oh, sure.
But I think there's a lot of, as we know, as alcoholics and addicts, there's a lot of shame around it in general. And then you put in
the Christian shame
on top of it. Yeah. And so I know for me, because I was saved and then I kind of fell into addiction, I kind of turned away from God because I felt God couldn't love me in this way. Like I was just being bad. I was a bad Christian. God wouldn't want me to pray to him. God wouldn't want to be around me. And so I kind of turned away, but I still would go to church with Nick and do the whole like gambit and pretending. And I still believed in God and Jesus, and I still believed I was saved. I just felt so far away from God because I knew what I was doing was wrong, but I couldn't stop. And so I think as a Christian who's been in addiction as a Christian, there's a lot of the shame and then projecting my own issues onto the Bible and God and my relationship with God and as a father and so on and so forth. And then it's hard to talk to a pastor who doesn't understand addiction. And a lot of people think it's a self-control issue or a morality issue. And I've seen
just stop doing it.
Yeah. I've seen on TikTok, people be like, well, Jesus saves. You just need to surrender, Jesus saves, Jesus heals, that stuff. And so it makes someone in addiction feel even more broken. Well, Jesus clearly doesn't want to save me.
Yeah. And like, hey, I noticed you're wearing glasses. Why didn't Jesus heal your eyesight?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. It's more complex. Like Jesus absolutely heals.
Sure. We know that.
Right. But
guess what? He didn't heal everyone he came upon.
Right. And there are a lot of things where like do the footwork and then this will happen.
Yep.
And so I needed something like more than church because I was still going to church and I think church was great. But anytime I was there, I just felt like a giant fraud because I knew what I was doing behind closed doors.
Yeah.
And I felt like if anyone else in the church knew, they would be, turn away and ashamed of me. And so I think it's good for churches to have support groups like Celebrate Recovery for places to go.
See, our church doesn't need one of those.
No.
Because like half our church is made up of alcoholics and drug addicts. Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I know that person.
Yeah. Yep.
So, yeah. But yeah, I do think it's a problem in churches that people don't feel comfortable. And like the church we were going to, it's great. But if I was going through something, I don't know what woman I would go to talk about it.
Yeah.
The pastor's a man. Which, could go to the pastor's wife, I guess. But I just didn't feel connected enough to bring up that stuff. And like I said, I don't know, like not all pastors. There's a lot of pastors who have had issues with addiction and stuff like that. But a lot of them also have grew up Christian, like they knew that's what they wanted to do. So they grow up in a very, they followed like Nick, never heard the guy cuss. Never heard, doesn't smoke, doesn't drink. And it's hard to come to someone with your own dirt, your own trash.
Yeah.
When there's that perception of this person's perfect. Or, you know what I mean? Like when there's going to be a lack of understanding. And that's why AA works so well.
I agree. Yeah. In AA, for the most part, all the best people there are totally honest and have a really good perspective concerning who they are. They are not trying to look good. They're not trying to put their best foot forward. They're being totally honest, because one of the program essentials is honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. So that's a big part of it. Whereas at church, we seem to think that we are doing better when we fake it, when we lie, when we pretend, when we put on that Sunday best and, fake a smile and pretend everything's great. We think we're somehow fitting in or doing someone a service. And it's the exact opposite that's true. So in the same way, people don't feel comfortable bringing up any problem, they also don't feel comfortable bringing up their addiction, because they're surrounded with a bunch of people that
are pretending they're perfect.
Yeah, they all look great. And the great thing about AA is like, look, buddy, you can knock off that smile, because I remember when you showed up here and we had to practically carry you up the stairs and pour you into that chair, so stop, pretending that you're,
right,
wonderful, because that's nonsense.
Right. And you go into AA and
mm-hmm.
These are all alcoholics.
Oh, yeah.
Like, these are all people like me. Now, granted, my first AA meeting, I thought there was going to be like brown bags under the table,
sure.
and
we're all
everyone's drunk.
Yeah, actively drunk.
So that wasn't the case. But there's a comfortability in knowing. And then I think I had that facade on for a while, which I think isn't abnormal.
Mm-hmm.
Parroting what people were saying, trying to act like I had it all together, wearing the mask, until AA felt like a safe space.
Yeah.
Because I think oftentimes with addiction, there's a lot of trust issues with people in general.
Yeah.
And not that you don't have to use discretion with what you share with who in AA, but like I talked about the last podcast, there is an authenticity in that group.
Yes.
That you don't find anywhere else, that I've never found anywhere else.
Yep.
In a group of people I barely know. Now, granted, I've been like, we can get that one-on-one with people.
Yeah.
I've never gotten it in a group like that of people that I'm acquaintances with, or some friends, some acquaintances, some I don't really necessarily care for.
Sure.
But it's authenticity, and we meet each other where we're at. There's sometimes judgment from other people, but it's like this cognizant, like that's their stuff. I don't know.
I'm totally with you. And it seems like the big difference is when we all showed up at AA, we were a wreck. When a lot of people show up at church, they maybe are coming from a different church, so maybe they realized that their life was a wreck at some point, and they came to God and they got saved and they went to church and their life started to change. But we don't all see that.
Right.
What we see is, I don't know, either the final product or a good fake version of what they hope the final product will look like. Okay.
That's what I did.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I do. When I go to our church, and I think churches need to be better about having an avenue where the congregation, kind of like how we do the meal after on Fridays, something like that. And I know it's harder the bigger the church gets.
Yep.
But that's so important. Like, you're not gonna just belt out in the middle of a sermon.
Sure.
I'm an alcoholic.
Yeah.
So there needs to be space for people to meet and talk and get to know each other. So there's more comfortability. So there's that openness.
Yeah.
With people.
Yep. No, I'm with you. It's really a shame that, and it can always be something that, is brought up anytime we're talking about churches. Being a phony, it hurts yourself. It hurts everybody else. God is not fooled. It's just nonsense. And what's a shame is that it makes a lot of people, or I don't want to say it makes them feel, but a lot of people will see that and they will feel that I have to be perfect and have a big smile and everything has to look good as well. And therefore I can't bring up, what I'm going through with this guy that I just became friends with my Sunday school teacher, with the pastor, with anybody, because what will they think of me, So,
right. It's ego, but
yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
You got some more questions there.
Yes.
Okay, give me one.
So you became Christian after you got into recovery.
Yeah.
Has your past ever gotten in the way of the accepting God's grace and forgiveness, because that was a big issue with me, is
Mhm.
because I was Christian during it,
Okay.
during the worst of it.
So I'll say no. Now, I take a very different view than a lot of Christians do. And personally, I believe most Christians are wrong in the way they look at things. And that's why they struggle with God's grace. Okay. So I look at myself as desperately wicked, sinful, evil, unrighteous, but God loves me anyhow.
So you see, there's not a difference between who you are today and who you were then in terms of sin. And
as a matter of fact, I am way worse today than I was then, because today I can be honest with myself about who I am. And all of my selfishness and my self-centeredness, all of my shortcomings, I can be honest with myself about. And it's okay now. Whereas back then, I always lied to myself, even though I was a total dirtbag. Back then, I thought, I'm a pretty good guy generally, So nowadays, when I read through the Bible, the Bible paints a different picture than most Christians want to believe. The Bible says, our heart is desperately wicked above all things. Who can know it? The Bible says that, we are unrighteous sinners. The Bible says that that's the best we're ever going to be. The Bible says we are as filthy rags. We are, and without getting into the details of what the Bible's talking about there in Isaiah, when it's talking about a filthy rag, it is talking about like it. And this is not literal. Okay, I'm going to avoid that for the sake of the discussion. You're smiling, so I believe you've heard the sermon on it. But if you think about it, if you've ever been to a mechanic shop and you get like, they always have like cotton rags that you use to wipe off the grease off of tools and parts and everything. And when you get a rag like that, if you're doing any kind of work at your house and it is just completely soaked through with chemicals and grease and everything, you don't wash it at that point. Okay, you throw it away. Yeah, there's literally nothing you can do with it. It's no good for anything. Nobody wants it. Nobody wants to touch it. It's disgusting. Just throw it in the garbage and get a new one. And the Bible, that's what it's talking about. We are 100% worthless on our own. There's nothing good in us. There's no righteousness. There is only wickedness. We are just a dumpster fire. But God loves me anyhow. So the idea that you were expressing before, as far as, well, I'm drinking while I'm going to church and I feel so guilty and I'm so ashamed and God must not love me and he must not want me. The thing is, when you were drinking, you were no worse than you were the day before you were drinking in God's eyes.
Right. I just felt worse.
You felt worse.
And kind of like how you feel worse because you're honest with yourself, but really you're the same human with the same
you got it.
Sin.
Yeah. I can't.
Just any sin.
You got it. I can't be any worse in God's eyes than I am today, than I was, before I got saved. I mean, the only thing that changes is that the righteousness of Christ I am able to put on. And what God does is God says he cleanses me of all my sins. So it's as if they never existed. But you have to understand that when God saved me, he knew about every single sin I committed prior to me getting saved, even the ones I forgot. And he knew about every single sin I'm going to commit from that time until when I die. And he forgave me of those as well.
Because he's outside of time.
You got it. So he's got them all covered. It's not like I show up in heaven and God's like, sorry, Patrick, I totally forgot to forgive you of these couple sins here. They just slipped my mind.
Or you didn't do your biannual baptism.
You didn't re-up, getting your sins forgiven again this year. So for me, I don't look at myself as good. I never want to consider myself, righteous or great or wonderful or anything like that. I want to consider myself like Paul did, I am the chief of all sinners. I am just human garbage. But God loves me anyhow, because God knows exactly who I am. So for me, coming from that place and knowing what a total piece of human garbage I was, it was wonderful to hear that God sent his son to die on the cross, knowing that Patrick Hayes one day was going to be born and that he was going to, run credit card scams to steal money from people and break into their house and burglarize them to steal money to go buy drugs. And he knew that. And he was still willing to send his only son to die on a cross just for Patrick. So for me, it's never been, don't get me wrong. Once in a while, I get real self-centered, and all of a sudden I think it's up to me to be good enough for God to love me.
And you're the pastor of a church.
Yeah.
Oh my
God. But then I remember it's like, you know what, Patrick, if it's up to you to be good enough for God to love you, you're in trouble. He is never going to love you because you are human garbage. A lot of people don't want to think of themselves that way. A lot of people want to think that they're, oh, well, I'm pretty good or I'm better than most. It's like, no, you're human garbage. Any Christian that thinks of themselves as anything other than human garbage is deceiving themselves.
Because there's a human standard and then there's God's standard. And by human standards, we can be
I'm doing
good people.
Better than
Ted Bundy.
I'm
Hitler.
I'm reasonably better than Hitler and
I
Ted
haven't
Bundy.
killed anybody.
So, or at least the number of Jews that I've killed is way under Hitler. Okay. And the number of people I've eaten is way below. Wait, did Ted Bundy eat
No,
people?
that's Jeffrey Dahmer.
Jeffrey Dahmer. Okay. The number of people I've eaten is way below Jeffrey Dahmer.
See, if this was a serial killer podcast, I would be spouting facts and statistics.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
You're studied up on your
true crime.
Okay. So what was the question again?
If you ever struggled with your past and accepting God's grace and forgiveness.
Okay, so my past has helped me accept God's grace and forgiveness. With that being said, yes, I struggle with accepting God's grace and forgiveness simply because I'm human and I keep being self-centered and thinking that it's about me. And God's like, it's not. Okay, if it was, you're right. I wouldn't love you, but it's not about you. So, taking that stance of, but God loves me anyhow has helped me tremendously.
My husband said something.
Oh, okay. Let's see if we have a question. Audio is good, and you spin me right round, baby. Nick, I gotta be honest. I did a podcast on homosexuality. It's a couple months back. I just don't think of you that way. You're a good friend, but it's platonic. It's like Christian level, platonic. I could go so far as bromance, but I don't think we're there yet. So, let's, man, you made that comment public. This is ridiculous.
He shamed me.
And you're here
I'm his wife.
And he's talking to me about 1980s, love songs from the Wedding Singer soundtrack with Adam Sandler. I'm just going to hit that one and just keep moving. Let's forget about
That's a good one to end the comments on. The one comment. Hold on. I have more questions. It doesn't recognize my face.
Yeah. Give me a question. I like questions.
What are ways you pull your recovery into your Christian life and harmonize them? Because we talked about how they fit well together. What ways do you notice? Because for example, I've noticed AA is always pushing me to be better. Okay. And it's don't hurt other people. Mm-hmm. Don't hurt yourself. There's some Christian principles in AA, just basically try to not be human garbage every day and just try to be a better human garbage than you were the day before.
Okay. This is what I'm going to say. Pastors need to heed this message. Alcoholics Anonymous is a program of
recovery?
No, it's a program of action.
Oh.
Right? Okay. I was quoting the big book. Stephanie doesn't know it that well.
I know the big book. I don't know it that well, no.
So Alcoholics Anonymous is a program of
action.
Okay.
There's a whole chapter about it.
Yeah. So into action. So we are given a whole bunch of very practical steps, things to do day to day. Do this in the morning, do this throughout the day. When you're angry, do this. When you're confused, do this. At nighttime, do this. So we are given lots of very, very practical steps, not the 12 steps.
These are tools.
These are tools.
And you get tools through doing the steps, but these, big book.
These
tools.
are very practical things to do to help you with your program. And unfortunately, in Christianity, the Bible isn't laid out the same way. And the Bible's a much bigger book, and understand there's a lot of reasons for reading the Bible and studying the Bible. But you really, and you know what, this would be a good book for someone to write, Practical Christianity.
There you go.
And
There's your next book.
There's my next book. Okay. I haven't finished my first one. And we can write a book where it is kind of like Alcoholics Anonymous, in that it gives you the things to do and not do throughout the day, and how to do them to be successful in your recovery. So for me, the idea of taking personal inventory, and when we are wrong, promptly admitting it.
See, I know pieces of the big book.
So, for me, my kids and I, let's see, today's Sunday, yesterday afternoon, we went out and we played pickleball, and we were having a great time. And then for whatever reason, because Dad's an idiot, Dad was a jerk in his, behavior and, the words he used when talking to one of his sons. And
you're a pastor.
Oh, my soul, would you knock it off? And 5 minutes later, I stopped and I said, "Hey guys, we got to stop." And I apologized to my son in front of my two other sons. I was like, "I shouldn't have said that, and I shouldn't have done this, and I'm sorry about that." And it was, although I know as a Christian, when I do wrong, it was step number 10 in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous that reminded me that it's like, look, dummy, when you're wrong, you need to admit it.
As soon as you realize you're wrong.
As soon as you realize that you're an idiot.
Which gets faster and faster.
It does. It absolutely does. And I was disappointed that, it took a few minutes, but either way, whatever. I'm a lousy pastor. Okay, let's just start throwing that word in front of it. So Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 steps of AA has absolutely helped me be a better Christian. As far as my Christianity helping me in AA, I don't know. I'm assuming it has. I haven't really thought about it.
Well, it's necessary to have a personal relationship with God.
Yes. Okay. So here's the thing. For me, obviously being a Christian helps me with Alcoholics Anonymous because, number one, there's no confusion with me as far as who God is and what he wants from me. And I know how to get closer to God. Okay. I can spend time with God in prayer. I can spend time singing to God. I can spend time reading my Bible and learning about God and from God. So I know how to grow spiritually. Whereas there are a lot of people in Alcoholics Anonymous that kind of stumble at that one, where you're supposed to enlarge your spiritual life, right? In step 11, what does step 11 say?
Are you testing me?
No, I
Sought
really
through prayer
don't
and
know.
Meditation to improve our conscious contact with God, and as we understood him, and praying only for the knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out.
Okay. So we are supposed to, through prayer and meditation, grow, okay, in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I know a lot of people that struggle with that when they don't know who God is. And they're like, man, how do you do that? How do you get closer to God? How do you do the will of God? How do you know when it's the will of God? And realistically, let me ask you this. How does anyone in Alcoholics Anonymous know when they're doing the will of God if they don't know who God is?
I don't know if you can. Because isn't it just because we can't trust our minds, right? And if you don't know who God is, if you don't have a guideline of who God is,
then you're going to do.
Then you're gonna trust your mind, and our mind just alcoholics in general, addicts in general, but people also in general.
Yeah,
we have a selfish mind, a deceitful mind.
Yes.
It's gonna do. What is gonna benefit me the most?
Yeah,
absolutely.
So I'm not supposed to trust my best thinking, right? My best thinking got me
in AA.
Okay. So I don't want to do, what my best thinking. I want to do what God says. And Christianity, the way it works is it's very simple. God requires us to deny our flesh and do what he says, follow him. So I always joke with people and I'm like, look, when you're looking for an answer in the Bible, as far as what to do in the situation, if you find an answer that you really like and you really want to do this, you missed it. Okay. because that's not how it works. What we learn about in the Bible is what God wants. And God's ways are up here and our ways are down here. And God's thoughts are up here and our thoughts are down here. They're so different. So that's the problem in AA. When people don't know who God is, they can flounder a little bit, and they do struggle. Great question.
Thank you.
Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
I did, but then when you asked if I had anything to add,
That's okay.
Let me think. Hold.
You can here. Wait.
Why did?
Nope, that's not it. This one. There we go.
So it's supposed to be my brain thinking.
Yeah. That's crickets when there's dead silence on the podcast. We don't know what to say. Go ahead. Give me another question.
Okay.
It'll come to you.
Yeah, maybe. Brain's not what it used to be. I'm turning 32 in September, so. All right. How imperative is your Christianity in relationship with God to your recovery? And I think we kind of touched on that, but how imperative is it to your recovery? For me,
go ahead.
For me, I have more willpower today than I did at the worst in my addiction to stay away from alcohol. I'm just as susceptible to picking up today as I was then.
Yeah.
At a time when I would make promises that I really meant to keep, and I would find myself drinking an hour later. So I have no more willpower today to not drink. I only get the power not to from God. So it's vital to my recovery to have that connection with a power greater than myself, God.
Yeah, absolutely.
That helps. And then also gives me those little like tugs of, step 10, like with God's help, I'm able to pick up quicker that I acted like a piece of human garbage, if you will, or selfishly, or this or that. It gives me, I don't know, I could not do recovery without God.
Ask the question again, because I think the question was just slightly different. You got to change the settings on your phone. Your screen blacks out in 2 seconds.
Well, my battery dies quickly.
Oh, is it an old phone?
No, it's not that old. I just I do things on it.
That's all right.
I'm working on my phone.
Do you have too many programs running in the background?
No, I close them regularly.
Oh, okay.
So
even
then,
I
have personal hotspot on a lot for the kids in the car.
Oh, okay.
Because I don't.
But you still might have programs running in the background that you don't know about that aren't open programs. They're running in the background.
Oh, that's true. I could. There's a setting or something.
If you go through settings, you can find, something that'll maximize your battery settings or whatever.
Yeah, I think it gets 2.5 minutes and then it starts to go dark. And then after 3, it goes officially dark.
Yeah.
Read
that question.
How imperative is Christianity in a relationship with God to your recovery?
Okay. So you answered about God to your recovery. As far as Christianity.
Sorry.
Okay, so no. But I just wanted to, because that's what I thought the question was.
Yes.
All right. So this is where I'll start. I was an atheist when I went to my first meeting.
Right.
I found out very quickly that atheists are fools, and that if God exists, it is not predicated upon my belief or non-belief in God. So therefore, I can pray and God can hear my prayers and answer them, whether I believe in him or not.
Right. Okay, kind of like it doesn't matter if you believe in gravity or not. If you fall out Mount Garfield.
Yeah, you got it. Okay. You can stand in the middle of the road reciting, I don't believe in trucks. Doesn't matter. So I left my first meeting not an atheist, or at least doubting my atheism. So I went home and I started praying, and I felt better when I was done. And then I did it again the next day because it felt so good the first day. And I continued praying every day from then until now. And I've always felt better after I prayed than before I did. Very shortly after that, I recognized there has to be a God. I didn't know anything more specific, but I knew there was a God. After I pretty much went right into monotheism. I didn't believe in God of the sun and the moon and the stars and the, whatever.
You just knew there was a God.
There had to be a God.
There had to be a creator of.
You got it. And I believe that God had to be personal to me. He was concerned with Patrick Hayes specifically. So I just kept going along those lines, not knowing exactly who God was. And then I ended up, after 3 years of sobriety, in a jail cell in Portland, Oregon, And I was surrounded by all these guys in orange jumpsuits that were being transported down to some state pen in California where they were all going to serve life sentences. And I was just in jail like overnight while I was waiting to be, arraigned or booked or whatever the phrase is. And I'm like looking around at these guys and I'm like, man, I got to change my life or I'm going to end up like these morons. Like, I don't want to be in an orange jumpsuit. So I got on my knees in that jail cell and I remember praying, and I prayed a third step prayer. Because keep in mind, I've been sober for 3 years and still ending up in jail. Like, come on, I am messing up my life. So I got down on my knees, and the third step is every time I go to recite one, I just draw a blank.
Turned our will and our life over to the care of God as we understood him.
Is that it? I feel like there was more in the beginning. Yeah. Anyway. Okay. So it looks like, okay. Got it. We have 14 minutes left on the SD card and we'll be at time. So we'll wrap it up in 13 minutes and then we can keep going on the video for as long as we want to get through your questions.
Oh, I think that's close to the end of my questions.
Okay. Unless you have to go or something, but we just want to make it an official ending here in a minute.
Right.
Okay. So I got on my knees and I remember praying and, turn our will and our life over to the care of God as we understood him. There's something else in the beginning of that. I know.
I'll just Google it.
Well, in my big book, it's right there, but I don't want to like get up and walk over there with my headphones and drag the soundboard onto the ground.
Okay, you don't want to pull a Stephanie?
Yeah. So I got on my knees and I said, look, God,
made a decision to turn our will and our lives
to turn our will and
to the care of God as we understood him.
Okay. So I got on my knees and I said, God, here's the deal. I promise I will do whatever you say for the rest of my life, so long as you tell me clearly who you are. Because at that time, I really didn't know. I mean, I heard about Jesus, I was learning a little bit about the Bible, but I didn't know who God was. And I wasn't praying to get out of jail. I just said, God, I am sick of running my life. Okay. My life, when I run my life, it is a dumpster fire. I don't want to do it anymore. I will do whatever you say. Just please show me who you are so I can figure out what you want. I was given the gospel very clearly like the next week after I got out of jail. So, it took a little while before I got saved, but that was my progression. Knowing exactly who God was not required to get sober, but being willing to turn my will and my life over to the care of God was absolutely necessary for me to get sober and stay sober. So that was really it for me. I had to be okay with just snuffing out and crushing and grabbing by the throat and squeezing and holding my will under the water until the bubble stopped and then doing God's will instead.
You have to do that every day?
Yeah. I mean, that's the goal,
yeah.
Is to turn my will and my life over to the care of God every day,
several times a day sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, recording has stopped. I know. Hold on.
It says we're still alive.
We're live there. Hold on.
Oh.
No, so there's a problem with the, it doesn't matter what it is. We'll keep going because we can pull the audio off of here.
All right.
So, one of the things that I found was an issue at AA was that people would get to a point spiritually and then they would stop their effort or trying to grow instead of, I need to learn more about God. I need to figure out exactly who God is. A lot of people are like, okay, I believe in God. God answers my prayers. I'm sober. That's good enough. Rather than saying, if God is the creator of the universe, shouldn't I figure out exactly who he is and then what he wants me to do? But a lot of people stop short because, let's face it, all alcoholics and drug addicts have problems with authority.
Well, we want the easier, softer way to like the bare minimum we have to do. My thing was always, if I'm turning the care of my life over to, I want to know, like, can I trust God? Should I trust God? Like, who is God? Because I had a general idea from youth group in high school, but kind of stopped when I kind of started my drinking, I kind of stopped listening to sermons and stopped reading my Bible and stopped all that stuff.
Yeah.
And as I have evolved in AA and as a person, my conception and gotten to know God better, my conception of God has changed as well. I was carrying a lot of my trauma into my relationship with God and projecting that onto God and stuff. And so that has shifted and changed as well. I don't know if that's your experience, but the more you've grown as in sobriety and as an AA member, and the more you've grown as a Christian, that conception kind of changes for you. It's not that God changes, it's just your understanding changes.
Absolutely. Okay, let me ask you this, because this is something I've had a thought about before. I think everyone, regardless of addiction or not, should go through a fourth and a fifth step.
Yes.
Every Christian I know.
I think every person should do the 12 steps, honestly, benefit greatly, because I went to therapy since I was like 12.
Yeah.
Never had the epiphanies and the changes and the outcomes I did. Sure there was some things, but they were always short-lived and short changes and stuff like that. The 12 steps really got into it deep and really were able to change how my brain works, essentially by changing my attitude and outlook upon things.
Yeah.
Like once I started looking at myself and stopped playing the victim and realized my character defects or defaults, shifted everything or started the ball rolling and shifting everything.
I always tell people, look, if you cannot stop drinking, you got to give AA a try. There is a segment of society where nothing else seems to work. And I was part of that society. Other people I know were able to stop drinking through various means. That wasn't me. The only thing that ever worked for me was the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't know why, but I also don't care why. It worked. That was good enough for me. So I don't have a reason to try something else. I don't have a reason to try to direct people to anything else. That worked for me. I think everyone should give it a go. And let's face it, if you find yourself in an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, there's a pretty good chance that you have a problem.
Unless you're a nurse who has to go, because we get those sometimes.
Yeah, if you're a sociology student who, then
has to write a paper on what you hear and the crazy cuckoos in the AA room.
Okay, did I ever tell you the most awkward and hilarious meeting that I've ever been to?
I don't believe so.
Life? Okay, let me tell you the story. So I had a friend of mine who got out of rehab, and she was the wife of one of my best friends, and she called me from rehab, and she's like, "Hey, Patrick, I'm in rehab. I'm going to be getting out next week." And I was like, "Yeah, I figured you were, because you just fell off the map, for like a month or 45 days or something." And I was like, "That's great." And it wasn't our first time through. So we've been, talking about this. And she's like, "Hey, when I get back, we really got to, go to a meeting, yada, yada." And I was like, "Sounds good. Let's do a tour of the valley. We'll go to a bunch of meetings, find you one that you like." Okay. So we're going to all these meetings, and we go out to a meeting that I normally never go to, but we're just trying.
You're meeting hopping.
You got it. We're just trying different meetings. So we go there, and there was a dozen of us, and there were there was one first-time visitor that had never been to a meeting. Okay, so a lot of people at home, they might not know, during the kind of the preamble of what we do to starting Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, they will ask, "Is anyone here for the first, second, or third time since their last drink that would like to identify themselves by their first name only?" So a lot of people, my name is Jenny, and this is the first time I've been to a meeting. And it was a girl's name. I don't remember what it was. So the guy to her left it seemed like her boyfriend, but I didn't ask her. No. The next guy to her left was chairing the meeting. And he's like, "Oh, that's great. So nice of you to come. Let's just go ahead and have a first step meeting. That'll be great." Okay. So for those of you at home that are not familiar with Alcoholics Anonymous, and by the way, you can get a big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Okay. You can buy them on Amazon. You can buy them wherever you want. And if you want to learn more about this and understand this, you only have to read the first 164 pages. And that's the whole program of Alcoholics Anonymous. So get a big book, read the first 164 pages. It's educational. and enlightening. It, if nothing else. And then you can read the stories in the back, and those are really entertaining.
I've read those out loud to Nick.
Oh, really?
I love it because I'm like, look how bad I'm not.
Yeah. Look at how level-headed I am compared to these people. Okay, so we're at this meeting, and this guy says, "Let's have a first step meeting." So the first step is we admitted that we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. So the idea is, until you admit the first step, that you're not going to get better, because you have to admit that you have a problem and you're powerless over alcohol. So in a first step meeting, everyone will kind of share about where they came from and how they came to a realization that I'm an alcoholic and I need to be here. Okay. So the guy chairing the meeting turns his chair and shares directly staring right at the girl whose first meeting it was. Okay. And
poor girl.
Oh, it was.
You already feel like spotlight is on you.
Immediately, I was like, dude, what are really? That was the best you could think of? And this girl had to be 24 years old. I mean, she was young. And I'm like, way to make sure she never comes back. And he's like, and he finishes sharing, which was very long. It was like 10 minutes, telling her, just talking right to her, hard eye contact. I mean, the whole time. And he's like, let's just go around the room. And he does this gesture. And then that lady turns and faces the girl, and she does it as well. Okay. So I'm there with my friend, and I'm like the fifth or sixth person. Okay. Third person does it. Fourth person does it. I lean over to my friend, and I'm like, don't you dare stare at this poor girl and tell her what she needs to do and this whole thing. So it gets to me, and I'm like, yeah, I don't want to share, because I was just I didn't know what to do, but I was just hoping this whole ordeal would be over for the sake of this poor girl. My friend shares, and then it goes right back to everybody else, staring right at the girl, telling her what she needs to do. This is the thing, you can do it, sweetie, and yada, yada. Goes all the way around the table, gets to her. Okay. She's like, my name's Jenny, and I'm a nursing student, and I have to go to 3 AA meetings in order to get my degree. I fall out of my chair laughing for a good 2 solid minutes. I am slapping the table and laughing my brains out. It was the funniest thing I had ever seen happen.
I wonder what she's thinking the whole time.
The whole time she's like, if these morons only knew,
I'm not an alcoholic.
I'm not an alcoholic.
Where's the point for me to say anything?
Yeah, and exactly. But she's never been to a meeting, so she doesn't know how it's supposed to go. And unless you're self-confidence flowing out of your ears, you're not going to be like, okay, we need to stop this because this is insane.
Right. She's trying to be polite.
Yeah, of course she does. Yeah. So and she was,
but I'm sure she had a great paper.
Oh my soul. I'm not kidding. I was laughing for so long that everyone was staring at me, and finally I'm wiping the tears from my eyes. And I was like, okay, I'm ready to share.
What'd you share?
Oh, I shared about how ridiculous the whole thing was. I was literally like, what the hell is wrong with all you people? It's this is our first meeting, and everyone, it was a train wreck. Her and her boyfriend, who shared after me, who was an alcoholic. So he brought her,
Gotcha.
I'll go with you to a meeting. They grabbed me and my friend in the parking lot, and they were laughing their brains out. They're like, this is the most ridiculous thing. So anyway, that was the most awkward and funny AA meeting I'd ever been to in my entire life. It was top notch.
Yeah.
Okay. What other questions do you have?
I don't know if I have any more.
It's okay.
Let me check.
Yeah. I just figured.
Check. Yep.
That was
I
it?
think I got them all.
Okay. That's fine.
Do you have any for me? It's okay to say no.
Yeah, I can't think of anything that came up as far as specifically ideas about addiction and recovery and Christianity. I mean, we could sit here talking about AA for as long as we want, but I'm trying to have it relate to everyone at home who are mostly Christians.
I was gonna say, are there any comment questions?
No, they're not. A couple people, just said it was good, and
Try to hit on you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to talk to him when I get home.
Yeah, I would hope that you do, because
he might be coming over here with a suitcase.
We have a nice deck. He can sleep out on that.
With the cats and the dogs.
Okay, well, everybody, thank you very much for joining us. It was Stephanie Kettle and Patrick Hayes talking on Bible Thumper about addiction, recovery, and Christianity. You can join us every Sunday night at 7 p.m. Mountain Time, 8 p.m. Central. You can also find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play. You can find us on Stitcher, Blueberry, TuneIn Radio, Audible. We are every place that podcast can be found. So please like and subscribe this podcast. It'll help us a lot. Share it with some of your friends. And I should tell you that after this, I am going to post an AA speakers meeting where I was the speaker, the last one that I did. You were there. Okay. So I'm going to put that up on the podcast as well, so you can hear kind of my testimony. So an AA speaker meeting is not when everybody at the meeting has a chance to share for a few minutes, but it's when everybody comes to hear from just one person, and they're going to talk for roughly
45 minutes.
30 minutes to an hour, something in there.
Yeah.
And they're going to kind of tell their whole story and how they got sober and everything. So I did that when I had my last AA birthday back in May. So my sobriety date is May 18th of 1998. And so every May, or every time you have a birthday, a lot of times you'll be invited to speak at a speakers meeting. It's a, good way to, keep speakers going through that meeting. And it's a nice time to do it right after you get a coin. So I did a speakers meeting, several months back. I recorded it on my phone just because I always wanted to, get a recording of it. And I thought, well, since we're doing a podcast about addiction, I might as well put that up next, and it would kind of be something that might pair nicely with, this podcast that we're doing. So you'll be able to find that. And then please join us every Sunday night live on our Facebook page, Bible Thumper Podcast Facebook page, and we have a Bible Thumper Podcast YouTube channel, and you can follow along. And then Stephanie is going to be back with us next month. Do you remember what day? Yeah, I don't either. And we're going to be talking about
opposite sex friendships if married in Christianity. Does that make sense?
It did, and you hit all the right words. But so we are talking about having a friend of the opposite gender when you are married in Christianity, right?
Yes.
Okay. So the idea...
Was it the S word that was bad?
No, I always say gender because, as far as for me, I always think sex is a verb. Gender is whether you're a boy or a girl.
That's fair.
But I've been told lately that you're not supposed to use the word gender. You're supposed to go back to using the word sex again.
I don't keep up with anything.
Yeah, I don't know. But anyway, so either way. Okay. So two folks, one boy, one girl, who are both married to someone else, being friends as Christians. How does that work out? Because people have had questions about that. Mm-hmm. And Stephanie is married to Nick, and I, Patrick, am married to Joanna, and we are friends. And we've been friends prior to me meeting your husband and being friends with Nick, who now is a buddy of mine.
But we're better friends.
And Stephanie meeting Joanna and becoming her friend as well. So did you want me to address that now?
We're better friends.
It sounds like a statement of fact. There's nothing that needs to be added to that. So anyway, we're going to talk about how that works and how we think it should work and things and how it shouldn't work. Does that sound good?
Yes.
Okay.
Also, probably like someone's single, but the other person married, but still friends.
Oh, okay.
Just
yeah.
like any opposite gender.
Yeah.
Christianity.
Yes. How to do that appropriately, how to not do it inappropriately.
Right.
You know, just a conversation about it, because I don't know. I never
just
hear about
opposite gender Christian people who
Friendships,
marriage is involved
there is
somehow.
a relationship with somebody else.
Oh, I just confused myself.
Whatever. Okay.
It's 8:30 on a Sunday.
So that's what we're going to do. So thank you everybody for joining us. We will see you in a couple of weeks or sometime in September. So everybody have a good night, and we will talk to you next Sunday.